But I think we are live right now. So this is awesome. Welcome to the Master Your Exit Live show powered by The Big Exit. I'm Lynn, and together with Graham today, we will be your hosts for this show. On this Master Your Exit Live show, we bring practical insights, we bring expert interviews like we do today, and tools to help small business owners like you prepare for your big exit. Now, this live show airs every Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles time, or that's Los Angeles time, and that's also where our guest is today, 7 a.m. in the morning or 10 a.m. in New York if you're based on the other side of the US, or 3 p.m. in London if you're based across the pond. We keep each show short and simple, about 30 minutes maximum. Now, if you're tuning in on our YouTube or on our LinkedIn channel, welcome. It's really awesome that you're here joining us live. And if you're here in our virtual webinar studio, that's really cool too. You can drop your questions in the chat function and we'll be able to answer them live during the show. And if not, we'll come back to them at one of our Q&A episodes. And if you're watching this episode later, because you can watch all of the shows on our website in replay version on thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, or you can listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. And that's all of the introduction that I'm going to do about the show, because I would love to introduce to you to the amazing Tracy Bech, who is 7 a.m. in the morning right now having a sip of coffee because it's so early where she's at. She's the founder of 60 Minute CFO and is helping business owners gain financial clarity. So basically, they can grow in a profitable way. She's really big on that and build businesses that last. I would first of all like to say welcome to the show, Tracy. It's really an honor to have you here today.
Good morning, afternoon, mid-morning. Thanks for having me, Lynn. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, in the work that you do, we had some previous conversations before, which have always been a blast. And one of the things that I know about the work that you do is you put a lot of emphasis, obviously, on business growth, but in a very profitable way, which is quite the opposite, maybe, to the stories that we often hear in the media about, these venture-backed businesses that they need to grow in like at all cost, basically, maybe not making any profits for years and years and years. So why your focus specifically on that profitable growth and like the journey that you have been on as a business owner yourself?
Yes. Well, so I actually I go on the road and I meet with groups of CEOs 2 times a year, and I do some benchmarking for them.
Sorry, I didn't
Um,
switch the recording on. Sorry about that, Tracy.
no worries. Yeah. So regarding your question for the recording, around the difference between growing for growth's sake and then growing profitably, is I did recently have an entrepreneur ask me that. And I usually, in these groups of CEOs, I rank them on the 14 key ratios that we measure in the 60 Minute CFO book. And none of those ratios include growth rate year over year. And this particular entrepreneur had been growing, but his ratios otherwise did not look great. And so his rankings were quite low in our peer group that we were doing this in. And he raised his hand and he said, Tracy, how come I want some credit for growing my business? Like, I've grown a lot. I've grown my revenue a lot. Why aren't we ranking ourselves on that? And I said, well, why do you think I'm not ranking you on that? Right? Because the situation that he was in was he was growing, but his revenue was going up, but his profitability was going down. And his liquidity was going down and his safety was going down as well. So he was taking on debt, he was depleting cash, and he was running his margins into the ground, but his revenue was going up. And I showed a little graph, and there's a relationship between how profitable you are and how much money it takes to make a dollar in your business, or a pound, or whatever currency we're using today. So the issue is, the difference is whether you are working for your business or your business is working for you. And in the long run, you might have a trajectory that looks like growing revenue is all you need to do, and you're proving something out that the market can bear this kind of product, and you can get this revenue from it. But if you are truly just an entrepreneur who's trying to grow their business and do so in a way that provides for you, you're going to need to do it profitably, or else your business is going to eventually run out of cash, which is the lifeblood, the oxygen of your business. And so that was the answer. And the other fun thing that I'll throw out there is, if for any golfers in the room or the show today, I likened it to what they say, which is you drive for show and you putt for dough. So we get really caught up on vanity metrics like revenue. That would be driving the ball. You want to get like this big, huge shot down the fairway, right? And we all know, though, that you lose your golf matches on the green in the putting. You can do this amazing shot, and so you can get all this revenue in the world, and then you can putt your way to a loss, right? You can just do all these putts, which is like all these expenses, all these things that erode your margins, and have nothing to show for it at the end of the day. So that was a fun little exercise, and that's a long answer to your question, but revenue is a vanity metric at the end of the day. We need to know what our margins are.
Love that. Love that focus on profitability. And that kind of like leads us into, when we have conversations around exiting. And I think Graham has a lot of things to say about that as well. Also, revenue is not that much of an important metric. It is kind of, but yet profitability is such a more important metric when we're talking about valuations of specifically smaller kinds of businesses. So, Graham, I see you nodding. Is there anything that you want to add to that? And you also said that you wanted to throw some curveball questions at Tracy as well. So I'm giving you the stage to go ahead.
I'll let Tracy warm up a little bit first. I know she's a, I don't know how many of our listeners know, but I mean she's a pretty adept sailor, so I'm sure she's used to dealing with curveballs like like sudden winds out of nowhere and stormy seas and all those things. So we'll save those for later. But yeah, I think that point around profitability is just so key. I take it a step further, and I'm sure Tracy does as well. It's not accounting profits, but it's how much like cash profit do you make every year? Okay. Um, and it's really not harder than that. How much cash profit do you make this year, and how much can you make next year and the year after that? And how certain and how can you grow that every year? So if you're not doing that, it's just like spinning the wheel faster but not going anywhere. It's like those guys who do a burnout on the start line on the racetrack. The wheels are spinning and it looks impressive, but they're not really going anywhere. So I think it's that same sort of mindset. And I think people tend to overcomplicate it. You must focus on those key metrics. Tracy, I mean, I know you also, you work a lot in the sort of moving industry with a lot of moving industry CEOs and that. And I suppose a lot of people would class that as what they call a boring business. It's quite a simple business model. Everybody needs that. But maybe you can drill down a little bit into that particular industry. Everybody's moving home. How do you, in that kind of industry, focus on creating profit? It's very competitive. You've got trucking costs, you've got, fuel input or gas input costs. I'm talking to a US audience here, but like practically with that kind of business, like what are some of the key things you encourage your counterparts to focus on when they're trying to be profitable?
Yeah. So, and this will be applicable to the moving industry, but it'll be applicable to anybody who's kind of in that like service-based business, but that has really low margins. So moving is just a low margin business. You have to know your numbers on a job costing basis. So, job costing is just really simply put, what's your margin per job that you're doing, right? And if that's broken, it's probably broke. If it's broken on the job level, it's going to be broken on the income statement level. And so a lot of times when we see that, we go, okay, well, where's our pricing and where are our costs? And most business owners are like, well, I can't just go out and give everybody a pay cut, right? Like these guys are showing up every day and moving people's homes, driving my trucks, putting things in boxes, and crossing the country or the state or the city. Well, I can't cut their pay. So then we have to say, well, what's our pricing? And have we done a competitive pricing analysis lately? And then that actually can start to dig into what is our sales strategy? How do we differentiate ourselves in the market? Do we know how to sell on value? Do we know how to sell on, or are we just purely selling on price? Because if we are just selling on price, what's to keep that salesperson from lowering the price just to win the business? And then it kind of becomes it's this like, okay, we need to reset our true north here. We're not trying to win jobs just to win jobs. We're trying to win jobs at this margin. And so it's a little bit of open book management within the company to really raise awareness, because they're our front line. They're the people who are bringing our work in. So if salespeople don't understand what it costs to do the job, and that, yeah, giving Mrs. Jones $200 off her move or whatever it is going to erode our margins, right? And even eroding a margin on a 1% basis has a huge impact. It can have up to a 25% net cash impact on the bottom line when we lose 1% at the gross profit margin level. So we got to break it down. We got to know what our job by job structure pricing and costing is. Otherwise, it's that's like the fundamental building block for building your profits.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the unit economics, and that's exactly what it is, right? And if you're losing money on each job, the harder you work, the faster you go towards bankruptcy, right?
Oh yeah.
But I mean, Tracy, maybe just elaborate a little bit on, you talk about pricing. Obviously, in a competitive market like this, it's hard to put up prices. But then, how do you differentiate? So you've got salespeople desperate to do deals and desperate to do business, but you don't want to do it at a loss. Like, what are some of the, like, maybe non-financial things that you can do to get customers to go to you? Is it finding different customers? What are some of the practical things that the non-finance hat you would discuss with some of the moving businesses?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we go in and we do, a strategic analysis around what's our sales strategy, we have to definitely know, are we those white glove high-end movers, or are we apartment movers? Are we moving, federally subsidized moves? Are we moving seniors? So you do need to know your customer and what the average move size is going to be, but we still need to retain profitability, no matter the move size, the job size, right? But when we go into that, let's say it's a competitive bidding, situation, and we're up against two other movers, we have to know what makes us different and better. And we have to be very clear on the fact that we are not going to sell on price. We're going to sell on quality and the outcome. When you sell on outcomes, it becomes a lot more clear. And then we also have to make sure that we are clearly the services within our estimate. So a lot of times what you see is like a nickel and dime estimate compared to a fixed bid estimate. And what's going to happen is this like hourly estimate over here, I say nickel and dime, but it's an hourly estimate, is they are going to go over, and they're probably going to go over by 10%. It just is what it is. But they want to give you that low number, so it looks like you are going to get a better bid, but it's going to go over. It almost always does. And that's never a fun thing. So you have to know how to sell on like a no surprises. The other thing is, and that if we go over, we'll eat the cost, right? Like that's the flip side of your fixed bid estimate. I'm a huge proponent of selling fixed bid estimates, because that's the only way that you're going to actually win sometimes. Because if you get the job done in a quicker way, in an efficient way, and you can hold yourself to it, you're going to not only make the customer happy, but you're going to make more money. And the second is like what all is entailed in your fixed bid, right? So we have to be very transparent. And in the moving industry, one of the things that happens is insurance. People think their moves are insured, and that if you load all of their stuff into the truck and you crash your truck, that you're going to cover the damage. And that's actually not true. It's insured to like a very, very low 60 cents per pound amount, which would cover nothing. You look around your room, that's nothing in there is worth 60 cents per pound. So what you need to do is make sure that the customer understands they need to actually purchase supplemental insurance and include that on their bid, because nobody likes a surprise on the back end as well. So, but what you say is like, that's all included. This is all thing. So what you're going to get with me is this, like, seriously, like you aren't going to lift a finger. I love it when people sell on outcomes. Again, like we're going to have you sitting at your dinner table by 6 o'clock, and you're going to have dinner in your new home tonight, because that's the level of service we're going to provide. You gotta like make sure the customer knows they're going to be fully taken care of. But again, I'm not so much a salesperson, but it's really important to not show up as a commodity in the marketplace, right? Like you have to differentiate yourself as somebody who's going to stand by, an A to Z kind of a service in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Now, talking about profitability, I mean, thank you so much for sharing this. Even for like low margin businesses, like the industry that you are in. I mean, obviously, profitability key for every industry that you're in, and you want to make sure that you run a business that's profitable because then the more you grow, the more money you make, instead of the more you grow, the more you drive yourself towards the abyss. Now, when it comes to that specific point in time where a business owner is thinking about at some point, retirement age, maybe they're just done with the business. Maybe there's other reasons why they're thinking of selling the business. Profitability is key when it comes to calculating value of small businesses. Yet, would you recommend or advise business owners who are at that inflection point where they're starting to see their exit on the horizon? Would you advise them to do certain things differently or make other financial decisions that have an impact on profitability once they hit that point where they see the exit on the horizon?
So the question is, what should we like? Should we tinker with our profitability as we see the exit coming, or just in general, what to do with profitability as we're
Yeah,
exiting?
so do we keep things going the way that we're doing them, or are we going to make different decisions in our day-to-day operations to increase value even more for the business? Or would we just keep doing things the way that we always have been doing things within the business?
Well, let's say this. I mean, we have Graham on the call, and we know that you could have this like perfect revenue and profitability mix, but then when somebody comes to buy your business and starts doing due diligence, there are a number of other factors that would play in. And I think with respects to your question, Lynn, I think one of the key ones is reducing key man risk. So if you are, I think probably the most important piece in that equation, like the way you've set it up, would be to start looking at, okay, well, I'm this profitable, but the entire business runs on my shoulders. In which case, I would argue that's an inflated profitability because someone else would have to be just like you and step in and run the business. You can't exit in that scenario, probably most likely, unless you find an extremely strategic buyer. But in that case, they're probably buying a job, which would come at, it would provide a discount for them in your business. So if your profitabilities are artificially inflated because you are running the whole entire ship, we need to look at the next step for, okay, we might need to reduce profitability, but we pulled another lever, which is decreasing key man risk so we can actually potentially take this business to market and have someone else step in and run it or own it without having to step into the job of it as well. So that would be my recommendation. Yeah, because we definitely have to keep an eye on that.
I think, Tracy, if I can add to that as well, I think it's those sort of subtle shifts. It's not like, oh, suddenly I want to sell in 3 years' time, so I need to change my business model. If you've been focusing on profitability, all of that's right. But you're right. There's that trade-off. Maybe you need to employ a foreman or an operations person at $60,000-$80,000 a year, depending on where you're at. Your profitability takes a hit, but your business is more sellable. And I think perhaps the other thing, which I'd love your view on this, is actually just the documentation and the record keeping. It's kind of the boring stuff, but you can be super profitable. You can have your taxes up to date and all those things, but a buyer is going to want to see evidence of that. And I guess that's also where you come in, is just making sure that, certainly for the last 3 years before an exit, that's critical when it comes to due diligence, right?
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think a lot of people neglect that. They think, hey, I'm profitable, my bank balance is going up, all those good things. What would you advise a business owner to do, like practically, if they haven't paid attention to the boring record keeping?
Well, yeah, they're going to want it. So somebody who's buying your business isn't going to want to just know where you are today, they're going to want to know the 3-year weighted average of where you are today, right? They're going to want to understand what's the trend here. Are you driving this business downward, or is it on an upward trajectory? Where in this life cycle am I stepping onto the escalator, kind of a thing, or going down on the escalator? So listen, I mean, I don't know, hopefully I'm preaching to the masses here, that you got to know your numbers. Like, it's going to do so, it's so much easier to sell a business confidently when you've been looking at the numbers on a monthly basis and a yearly basis for the past X number of years, right? And you can certainly come in and cram, and you can learn all of this stuff in the final hours before you want to exit, but you won't be able to change the past, right? So it's going to be what it is. And there might be stuff that once you look at it with the lens of exiting, that you wish you would have done differently to make a few decisions to show, to either input new processes and procedures and people into your process, so that this is a little bit more of a business that runs without you, so that the numbers are what you want them to be on the day you want to exit. So it's like going to the gym. Like, if you're going to your 10-year high school reunion and you want to lose 10 pounds, you can start the year before the reunion, or you can start 2 months before the reunion to get in your, fighting shape or whatever. It's just like going to the gym. It's just like exercise. It's just like nutrition. Like, the more you do your financial fluency and diligence, the stronger and better your business will be, and you will be at understanding it.
I'm going to my 30-year high school reunions. So 10 years was a long time ago.
My 30 years coming up too. I just said 10 is do people go to their 30 years anymore? They're just on Facebook.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Getting a sore point here. Well, thank you so much for just elaborating and doing a little bit of a deep dive, both in your industry, but as well zooming out and having a look at some common, basic, really good practices that small business owners should, incorporate into their day-to-day job. We spoke about profitability, we spoke about key man risk, and being able to slowly step out of the business and maybe taking a profitability hit for a little while whilst you're on that process, and probably doing it earlier rather than later, even when or specifically when you're thinking about exiting your business. So thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge. I mean, 30 minutes fly by so quickly. So we still have a couple of minutes left. If there's anything that you would love to share with our audience of small business owners who are thinking about exiting, now's the time to do it, Tracy.
I mean, the other thing I would say is, if you're interested in learning more from me, I have a membership that teaches all of this at 60minutecfo.com. But the other thing I would really add to all of this is seek out your industry benchmarks. Don't do this in a vacuum. So you have to know what the bar is in order to meet it or even raise it. And I would also just really urge you to think about how you could also meet or achieve your industry benchmarks. That's one thing that I'm really trying to push into the minds of business owners, not to stress them out and say, hey, you're not doing good enough. But what I think we are on the precipice of is, with technology where it is, with AI where it is, we're in a really exciting time. And we should look at how that might optimize our businesses toward profitability. I think there's going to be a real impact on all of our bottom lines to the positive. I also think that we're going to start seeing more and more competitive businesses in the marketplace. So I would hate for anyone to be caught flat-footed on that. So there's lots of places you can get your industry benchmarks. I offer those for free for people if they know their industry NAICS codes, but really start getting in there and understanding what yours are and then what the industry is doing. I would argue that this is a really great time to show how you are meeting and exceeding. I liken it to the 4-minute mile, right? Like, humans didn't think that we could run a 4-minute mile until somebody did. And then once somebody did, people started running the 4-minute mile. So we're on that precipice. Like, in the moving industry, we used to think 50% gross profit margin was the end all be all. And now I have movers out there aiming for 60. right? So we don't want to be caught flat-footed in our industry. So that would be kind of my plaintive cry for folks who are looking to do this work.
You say by the bell. I was going to ask you some like profound question about sailing and the analogies between sailing and preparing a business for sale, but I think we're out of time. So.
I love it. We'll do that for a round two.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Exactly. Amazing. Graham, besides, your sailing questions, sailing and selling questions, anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
Me or Tracy?
Yeah,
From my
you.
side. Sorry, I'm closer to wine o'clock than coffee time, but no, nothing from my
I
side. I
noticed.
think
It's like I'm going. I'm
I
out the
just hope
door. Yeah.
anybody listening to the show, I mean, Tracy, we work together on a bunch of different things. And, I think just the way that you simplify and bring clarity to, finance is a superpower for any business owner, so, and the point you touched on there is just educate yourself, understand your benchmarks. I'll use a quick analogy on that. People are quick to talk about my business sold on X multiple. The benchmarks are what determine that multiple. It's the things that underpin that tell you whether you're going to get upper multiple or lower multiple. So understand what goes into that. And then you can really sort of maximize your chances of actually either building a great business or maximizing your exit, whatever you choose to do. So that's all I'd add. But Tracy, like, such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's so fun to be with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So just to wrap things up, so this is a wrap, or that's the wrap for this week's show or this week's episode of the Master Your Exit live show. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, thank you to Graham and thank you to Tracy for being here. If you're watching this live or in delay, I hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to help you prepare for your big exit. And remember, you can catch any of the replays of any of the episodes on our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, we'd also love to hear from you. You can send in your exit related questions for next week's show by heading over to thebigexit.co. Master Your Exit sign up. You can sign up there, send your exit related questions, and we can answer them live on the show in any of the future episodes. So we'll be back next Tuesday at 7 a.m. if you're based in the Los Angeles time zone, or 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London, with more tips, expert interviews, and tools to help you master your exit. I would say until then, keep building, keep preparing, and we'll see you next week on the show. Thank you so much. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for being here.
You guys.
Bye-bye.